our approach, we make these two concepts, we mix the two concepts to enlarge the scope and get more data, but also to still keep some structure in our model to be able to plug in our business application, the existing one and the new ones. So in this slide, we would like to show you how we did it. So on the left side, you can see the database part, as we could do before. So you spend a lot of time when you have a database to get some structures of consistent data. So this means you have to load data, you have to clean data, you have to transform it, and sometimes aggregate data. But once data is in the database or the data warehouse, you can. It's very easy then to collect to access to it. That's I would say the traditional way of working. And maybe at the far right, you have what would be maybe the big data in a couple of years, and what is not today in our context is that you only have raw data, so unstructured information, but as your application needs consistency, you need to have more complex access, very smart accesses, to be able to use this to transform the data into information. The way we found is in the middle. So we still have some structured information, structured data, but we have a mix also with unstructured data, with raw data. And we use what we call the smart accesses. So to give you an example, if you want to have the total sales in a year, if you are in a database concept, you will collect all the sales from all your brands, from all your sources. That could be stores, that could be web. You will transform all this data and will store the total in your database. In our solution, we no longer automatically calculate this final aggregation. Sometimes you only store. We only store the raw data, all the details, and it's only when a user or a business application needs to access the total that the computation is done. This means that the access is not only collecting data in a data set, it's now collecting plus transforming and plus aggregating when necessary. So the key here, when we look at the three V's, volume, variety, and velocity, is velocity. And the velocity was the key to determine if we keep structured data or unstructured data. When the system was fast enough to make these computations live, then we implemented raw data. But when we don't have enough speed to get the data, we have to keep the traditional approach and aggregate data in advance and just collect it in the end. So the scope is very large, as Claire said. So we have multiple sources. So we collect data from stores, our customer service, our websites, our mobile, our emailing system. The social is not yet in the scope. And we do it for all our brands. So each system is different, and each brand is different. So it's in the end, you got a lot of different data coming into the system. In the big data environment, we run analytics. Analytics then could be used by batches. but also as a trigger to have interactions, immediate interaction with, for example, with our website. So to give you an example, if an information comes from the website, it can trigger something to the emailing solution. So we put in green the systems where we have these two-way interactions, and are the web, the mobile, and the emailing. For the customer service and the store, today we only have one-way interaction, that is the stores and customers load our big data, but we don't interact in return with these two areas.
So, once we gathered this huge amount of data, of course, we began crunching it and using it in order to have profit and revenues, to increase our profit and revenues. And we started that in January 2012. So if you want some examples of how we use that, the big data, for example, we built automatic emails. So these emails are calculated when you visit our website or when you call customer service, something like that, when you have an action. And their content depends on what you did, what your action were, and what your activity were at this time, at this point of contact. To do that and to personalize the content, we created a product recommendation algorithm thanks to all the data we get. So this product recommendation algorithm is calculated on your previous sales, your previous visits, your previous clicks, your previous emails, and all we know about you. And this recommendation algorithm is used in our emailings to personalize them. It's used in an iPhone app that we have specifically developed, and which is like a gaming app. The idea being to let our customer discover new products that should fit their styles. And then what we did also is that we have been able to reallocate our commercial investment to reallocate them accurately, because now we know where our customer comes from, and we know what they do between two orders or two purchases. And we actually, work is in progress on that. We always invent new ways of doing marketing, and it's quite a transformation because we learn each day about our customers. So it's in progress.
Thank you for that. Let's see, before I ask you anything, let's just see if there are any questions from the audience for you about your big data project. Any hands for that? I can see one in the middle there. Maybe you need a microphone. Okay, go ahead.
Hi, Luc Béat from Air France. Thanks a lot for that very detailed explanation on how you did this. I was a little bit also interested in what the results were of all these efforts that you've been putting for several years now.
Which results do you want?
The results of your,
the results
of all of this.
In terms of return on investment and.
Pick your KPI, increase sales, or add customer satisfaction.
Yeah, we can't give you any figures, of course. What we can say is that in the beginning we didn't know what it could bring us, because we used to be a mail order company, so we know that it's very good to get data because you can target, you can do a lot of things. But our interrogation was about marginal ROI. Would it be would we be smarter with more information? So what we did is that we did a low-cost project, let's say it like that, because we did the project was totally in-house, so we minimized our costs, and we also made choices because our cost reduction in terms of IT, where maybe you can help me on that.
Because, in the end, you just have now just one system compared to 4 or 5 systems, because we have 5 brands in France. So even if you spend more money on this new system, in the end, it's a good return, because the total cost is less today than what you had before.
Yeah. So in terms of ROI, we know that 11 months. It's okay. We've got the break even. Our project hasn't cost too much to hasn't cost. Yeah. Okay. So in terms of the benefits, we got on our automatic emails, we've got conversion rates that have been 10 times higher than conversion rate on our classical commercial emails. So we've got revenue on that. Our recommendation algorithm gives us better conversion also on our iPhone app and things like that. Then our reallocation of our commercial investments have increased our profits, not our sales. We managed to invest less to get the same turnover. That's what I can say.
It's clear. It's pretty clear. Yeah.
Okay. I think what we'll do, because we're conscious of time, if you've got a question for the Redcats team, we'll come back after the next presentation, because I'd now like to, thank you for that, by the way, very much. I'd like to introduce our team from the social gaming company IsCool Entertainment. And we've got here with us Gaelle, did I say that right? Yeah, good. Gaelle Periat, you are the data team manager at the company, and also Olivier Mathieu, and you are the Vice President of Business Operations. So you're going to do a similar double act to the one we just saw and explain to us about your big data project. So please, go ahead.
So good afternoon, everybody. I'll very quickly introduce the company to start. So we are a publisher of social games, and starting next month of mobile games. So far we've been publishing our games on Facebook. We've published 6 of them for the past 4 years, and last year we've generated a revenue of 10 million euros that consists mainly in selling virtual goods to people who use our games. So our games are, access to our games is free, but the users that really engage in them have the option to buy some options that make their experience better. And that generates about 80% of our revenue. And so the way we publish our games is we usually start with a very simple, minimalistic version of a concept. We put it out there on Facebook, and we see if it gets any tractions among users, if people like it, if they respond to the concept. Then gradually, over time, we add new features, new layers of gameplay, new characters, a universe, whatever we think would benefit the experience. So at the beginning, when we launched the game that's featured here on this slide, it was a very, very, very simple game, which was based on simply exchanging points with your friends. It got a lot of success almost immediately, actually way more success than we could have anticipated. And so based on that, we acquired about 2.5 million monthly active users in less than 3 months. And after that, we shifted our focus to retaining these users, to engaging them, and to also try and open avenues for monetization of that audience. And we did that, and it worked really well for about a year, and the only data that we really looked at were fairly high level KPIs, like traffic, revenue per user, that sort of things. Now, after about a year and a half of evolving the gameplay, making it more and more sophisticated, also, having users that had more and more diverse profiles, some of them had joined the game yesterday, others had been active for over a year. One day, one of our KPIs, and specifically our churn rate, started going down. So we were, in other words, we were losing players. And so we sat down in a room with, there was myself, the guy in charge of marketing, the producer, the designer, the community manager, and a bunch of other people, and we tried to figure out what can we do to address this churn problem. And the designer said, well, we need more content. The marketing guy said, we need CRM. The community manager said, we need a forum to talk to our community. And it turns out that all of these ideas were potentially relevant, but we had no way to decide which one to prioritize. As I showed before, we're a relatively small company, so we have to prioritize what we do first, and that's really a big part of a big success factor in our business. So, because there was no way to objectify what we needed to do, we couldn't even really get to the root cause of the problem. When we saw our churn rate going up, we didn't know if it was the players that had been active for a year that were churning, or the new ones that we couldn't really retain. We didn't know why. We didn't know at what point in the game they started to get frustrating. And so, in other words, we could not really understand anymore. Our product had become too complex to be understood just through the naked eye. So that's when we decided to really turn to data to help us understand what was going down, and Gaelle is going to explain to you how we did that.
Hi. At IsCool, we collect a lot of data. You can see that the most virtual good exchange generate a big volume. We have 1,400,000,000 of exchange each day. It's equal financial transaction you can see at Nasdaq, for example. Each day we have 30 giga data to collect, and it's very difficult to collect and analyze that. So we have built a big data warehouse. And now I explain you how we collect and how we display data and analysis. So at first, on the game, we collect two. Sorry for my bad English. We collect data from two sources. On the game, we have analytics tags, and we collect the application logs. And after we have these two sources, we put in on a database. We use the vectorize, I don't know if you know. And after we can analyze the data with two tools, SAS for data mining and Tableau software for reporting.
Okay, and based on this data that we collect, we've more and more sophisticated our approach to how we use data to make our everyday business decision. When we look at high-level metrics and KPIs, what we see is just an indicator of where we have to dig, what's going wrong. But data in itself, the data that we collect, is pretty much raw material. It doesn't really tell you the what the root cause of the problem is. So we use data mining we use a number of data mining techniques to dig into that raw material that is this data. So we use segmentation, for example, graph analysis, predictive scoring, all these things. And based on that, we're able to say, actually, our high-level churn problem is the problem that long-term players, for example, who have been playing the game for a very long time, have sort of hit a roadblock because, for example, there is no I don't want to go into the specifics of the game unless it's interesting, and we'll see that through questions, but we're able to really very, very clearly frame our questions to the point where answering them through data becomes a way to set the agenda for all the marketing and the game development work. So we're able to say, game development team, for example, stop working on creating new characters, for example, for the game, because what people really want is a leaderboard to rank players against one another. Because we've been able to frame the question so precisely that answering that question becomes actionable. That was really our problem at the beginning, is that high-level metrics are not actionable. So that's why we use this architecture, and that's why we use all these data mining tools in order to get to very, very precise questions that from which we can derive, business decisions, product development decisions, and so on and so forth. So that's about it for the presentation, I think.
Good, thanks Olivier and Gaelle for that. Let's try the same thing again. Let's see if there's any immediate questions from the audience on what you presented to us. If not, I can't see any hands up. I'll ask you, Olivier, how difficult was it to get everyone willing to incorporate data in their approach to their job?
Well, unlike Redcats, this was not really a top-down initiative, so we turned to data when we had no other choice. And I would say, generally speaking, it was relatively well accepted in the sense that everybody realized that because we could not get to a consensus, we had to find a way to objectify the way we would look at our problem. But I would say that specifically for creative people, designers in particular, they initially saw data as something that was contradictory to creativity. And so the big challenge was to make them accept the idea that data were here only to set the agenda. It's a great tool for diagnosis, but it's not the cure. So what we do now is we ask very precise questions to our design team, and we tell them, instead of saying, we tell them, for example, build the best possible leaderboard that you can find, that you can imagine, and that's where you can unleash your creativity. But don't tell me that you want to design a new monsters, because that's not gonna help our performance. And gradually, over time, it's really becoming engraved now in our company culture, and now it's not an issue anymore, but it was a little bit at the beginning.
And Gaelle, I was going to ask you, how many people does it take to run your data operations?
At IsCool, we are 3.5. The half person is a Python developer, not a kid. Okay. And we are 3 data guys, 1 data miner, 1 data analyst, and me at web analyst. And we have each our expertise of data, and we do what we can often, yes. But only 3% is okay for maintain this data warehouse and needs of analysis in IsCool.
Okay, thanks. And from your side, how many people are involved in your data operations, Frederic?
On the IT side, it's just 3 people, 3 or 4 people. And so there are people working on the big data system, but also on the business applications, because we have some emailing campaign management system, emailing system. We got a lot of applications to run around the big data, and there are more people working on these applications rather than people working on the big data.
Okay, and so, having seen these projects, and I'll stay with Redcats for this question, what's the next step now? You've done this huge piece of work. What are the next steps after this?
As we said, it's a big step. We already made a big step because the key improvement for us was the interaction between the system and the big data. So really, it's a big step for us. And so our goal is to to connect all the system to our big data. So when on the slide we could see that some systems, some business applications are not able today to use analytics, real-time analytics. So we are working on building more web services to allow this system to access big data and added value information. So that's the main important step.
For example, customer service.
Yes.
For example, what?
Customer service.
Of course, we would like to add social in the scope. It's not the case today. And finally, we are thinking of enlarging the scope to other countries. At Redcats, we have several countries, but this project is only focuses on France. With big data, on traditional database, it doesn't. For us, it didn't make sense to add multiple countries in the system. But with big data, I think we could extend the scope to additional countries. So that's also a way to develop the system.
And which domain benefited the most from your big data solution?
I think that the emailing system, that the first one that was able to interact real time with our big data, and today this system is able to handle all the data we have regarding our customer in the company. So I think that's the one that benefited the most. And now the website, we are working a lot with the website to have some very, very deep interactions whenever people connect to the website to ask the big data if there's something to propose, if there is additional information, personal information to send back to the website to propose something. So I think today it's the emailing system, the campaign management system, but in the very near future it will be the website.
Thanks. Maybe one last point. We have some smaller brands in Redcats, just like Cyrillus, for example, and they benefited a lot of this big data because the costs were. We did this for all the brands. And when you're a smaller brand, you couldn't have afford it.
Great, okay. Well, Claire and Frederic from Redcats and Gaelle and Olivier from IsCool Entertainment, thanks very much for preparing that and bringing it in. Let's give them a round of applause.